and I am Pastor Peggy from Slave Lake Wesleyan Church in Slave Lake, Alberta.
And I'm Pastor Diane from Norfolk Wesleyan Church in Norfolk, New York. Welcome to Warm-Hearted Wednesday.
Warm-Hearted Wednesday. It's so much fun.
Yes.
Same great show, little different format, new graphics, new intro, new music.
And fabulous guests.
Fabulous guests. We're taking it to a whole new... So who do we have on the show, Pastor Diane, today?
Well, today we are completely honored, and you can tell that we're just both gushing because this lady is a role model for both of us. Dr. JoAnne Lyon, Reverend Dr. JoAnne Lyon. She is the General Superintendent Emerita of the Wesleyan Church. So she was the head of our denomination. She also was the founder of World Hope International and I think she is currently the ambassador for said organization, which her son is running that organization now. Just a fabulous lady, a great communicator, and has an amazing heart for people and for the Lord.
And I feel like I'm taking a book from her page because she founded the organization in her bedroom with a desk and a computer, and I'm in my bedroom with a desk and a computer. So I'm like, we are so happy to have Dr. Lyon today. And, just to fill us in a little bit on the history of the Wesleyan Church, because some people think that the Wesleyan Church is like brand new, but it's not. It's been around for a long time. And some issues that the Wesleyan Church are sort of founded on, which I think you'll find extremely interesting and amazing. And just to let you know that there will be two versions of this interview. There will be this one here on Facebook.
And then we'll also have this version on Facebook or on YouTube, but we'll also have the extended complete interview on YouTube, and we will put the link down in the comments.
Yeah. So let's welcome our new guest.
Our new best friend.
Our new best friend. She admires us and we admire her. I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lyon, for joining us. And I just thought we'd start out with, could you give us a little thumbnail sketch of who you are?
Well, that's really hard because I'm old. And so when you're old, that takes a long time. Both my mother and father were ordained ministers. So I was born kind of in that setting of revivalism and that kind of thing. A great Jesuit priest says that the is a long tunnel from going from your parents' faith to your own faith. God stopped me in my tracks, and I really said, Lord, here I am. I'll do anything. And I began to repent, and God filled me with His Spirit. And I'm telling you, at that time, it was a spirit of love that I've never. And when we talk about being filled with the Spirit, there are a lot of discussions about what that means. But ultimately, it's about God's love. When His Spirit moves in us, and God lives in us. And worked for a decade in the urban area of Kansas City, Missouri, really rebuilding the urban part of the city. Still to this day, there's some great stories that have come out of that. So there's been that part in my life that God has just constantly called me to the issues of justice and His justice. And what does that mean? And it goes along with what it means to be a holy person. I think that Amos says it very well. Let justice roll down like a river and righteousness as a never-failing stream. So it's where justice and righteousness come together. And that's the point where transformation takes place. So skipping a whole lot, but in 1985, I was invited to go with an ABC News team to film a documentary on the famine in Ethiopia. Still to this day has been considered the largest famine in modern history. And at that time, I realized that here we are in a world that has abundance in other places, but not abundance in other places. And no one should starve to death in this world. And so that's what began to catapult me. And I came back and talked about it in the Wesleyan Church because I'm a part of the Wesleyan Church. And it took us a while to grasp that. But finally, 11 years later, and I talk about this as the fullness of time. So we started in January 1996. Don Bray was the head of the Wesleyan Missions at that time and encouraged this and worked with me. But we chose to incorporate separately so that we could work in a lot of other places and do things that the church could not do. Not many times have I had this radical act of faith. I don't know this much at all. But we had 2 kids that had finished college, 2 more that were in college. And I quit my job. I quit everything and said, this is it. I'm taking this leap of faith. I just knew somehow I didn't have any money. The denomination was great, but they didn't have any money. On January 21st, I had dinner with a man and his daughter, and he was asking me what was going on. We talked about this prior. And so then he said to me, well, how much is this going to cost you to do this year? And so I pulled out the budget and I said, here it is. This is what it's going to cost to operate this year. And he and his daughter sat there and looked at it and tears in their eyes, and they looked at me and said, we'll pick up the whole thing. And so they picked up the entire amount to operate for that first year. But that's kind of it. 4 kids and 10 grandkids. So
wow. Most people, when I talk to them and say I'm a Wesleyan minister, they're like, I don't know what that is. Can you give us a little history of how the Wesleyan Church maybe started in North America, and what were some of the issues at the time that we just sort of took a role in?
The Wesleyan Church is an old denomination. It was a group of people with the Methodist Church. And so we were all part of the Methodist Church at that time. But if you remember the mid-1800s in the States, we were in a bitter battle over slavery. So finally, a group of people said, we are going to leave this church because slavery is evil and slavery is sin. And so that's literally the foundation upon which the Wesleyan Church started. And many of our people were abolitionists and went to the South. There was a statement made in the state of North Carolina that said, there are not enough nooses for us to hang all the Wesleyans we want to hang. Now that's pretty radical. Then a second piece of what the Wesleyan Church was, the women's rights issues, and Susan B. Anthony and that group. And the only place that would allow them to meet was the basement of a Wesleyan Methodist church in Seneca Falls, New York. Now that today is a national museum, and there's a wall there that calls it the Wesleyan Wall, that they still have some bricks from that wall. And then the first woman to be ordained in the United States was ordained by the founder of the Wesleyan Methodist Church, Luther Lee. Her name was Antoinette Brown. She was not a Wesleyan, she was a Congregationalist. But the first woman to be ordained was by him. Now I understand, I've never seen this proven, but I understand that the first woman ordained in Canada, at least in the Atlantic area, was ordained by a pastor of the Reformed Baptist Church.
I believe I read that not too long ago.
Yeah. And so that says again, because the Reformed Baptists are now Wesleyans, and that says that again, here we were pretty radical out there in front. So here in Indiana, which is a funny thing to think about Indiana, I was at this church about 5 years ago, and they said, we need to take you to see some artifacts we don't quite know what to do with them, but here they are. And here was a pulpit where Frederick Douglass had preached from. And Sojourner Truth had preached from that pulpit in a Wesleyan Methodist church here in Indiana. And then I was up on a little north of Marion, Indiana. Here they brought out a door, and they had bullet holes in this door. And this church had been on the Underground Railroad. And the pastor was called the conductor on the railroad. And they would hold slaves in there as they were trying to escape. And these were bullet holes where slave owners had shot and wanted the slaves out of there.
Dr. Lyons, I would like, I've heard you speak before at Silver Lake, at Kingswood, at different places like that. And you've told social justice stories from your ministry around the world. But is there one story that sticks out to you as being, a highlight for social justice? And, could you take us through that story a little bit?
The Civil War was going on in Sierra Leone, and it was a brutal civil war. It was power it didn't have anything to do necessarily with tribal war or anything, as Rwanda was in a sense. This is just a power war. And the way the rebels marked their territory was to cut off people's arms and legs. The news was not getting here. We were getting the news from our church, but it was never on the news here in the States. And I thought, well, maybe if I could just go and take a journalist with me, we could get a story and bring it back, and I'm sure CNN and ABC, they would love to get it. I was so naive. So we landed in the capital city of Freetown, and I was a wreck. I prayed, Lord, you got to give me the gift of journalism, the gift of photography right here. As we were getting our bags off the carousel, this man came up to me, gave me his name, and he said, I'm a foreign correspondent for the Washington Post. I'm in here to get a story. Is there some way you could help me? That next day we traveled together, and that Washington Post reporter and I, and the guy that was with me, we traveled together for 3 days. And that's where we began to get in touch with we went to a place where they, about 1,200 amputees in this campsite. And it was one of the most heart-wrenching things you can imagine. And he was deeply moved by that. And as we went back to the vehicle, he said, what are you going to do about this, JoAnne? He said, this is the worst evil I have ever seen. He just told me to come back from Afghanistan where he's trailing around the Taliban. And he said, this is the most evil I have ever seen. What are you going to do about it? And I said, only God can do something. So he went back to the States. That story was on the front page of the Washington Post. And the picture of some of the women, a mother and a child in that camp, because both of their arms had been cut off, and hear them tell their stories. But that Post reporter didn't just leave me there. He found a foundation in the UK that would help us get started with limbs and get started with all of this. And many times we think, well, I can't do anything big because I don't have anything. What you have in your hand, what is in your hand? And you take what's in your hand and God multiplies it. And the other thing I might say about justice work is we give up too soon. Because justice issues are deep, and people have to give up. People who have power have to give it up. We're embroiled in the United States right now in issues of immigration and how to have a really fair, comprehensive immigration reform. And we started working on that in 2006. But remember how long it took Wilberforce? 20 years. But righteousness finally came. It isn't just, we'll take care of these people, and many times you have to in the process, but you change the laws.
Dr. Lyons, we're in the midst of this global pandemic now, and in every country, the whole world is being affected by it. Is there anything that you would like to speak into that area as we go forward as a church?
Well, I think this becomes the greatest time for the church. It's difficult. Everyone has an opinion. There are all kinds of conspiracy theories out there. I don't know if you have them up there, but we have them down here. And if we aren't careful, we will constantly get sidetracked with the conspiracy theories. And the conspiracy theories will keep us isolated, will make us move back inside. They will make us lose faith, and we start believing those, and we don't see God present and God at work. And so it's difficult to lead in this time because everyone has an opinion, about how you ought to lead. Should you have church? Shouldn't you have church? And I don't know what your laws are either, but the real piece is that God still has called us together. The church is not closed. The church is still open. The church is being the church as it's never probably been in recent history. And so I just think it's the great opportunity that we have during this time to stay focused on who God is, look at history, how he's led us all this time, not just this is the only thing that's happened. If we go back, we've had many of these times along the way. And I feel like we have a revival of compassion that's happened during this time also. And we can't lose that people are caring for each other in ways that they didn't care for each other before because they just expected the church to do it. Then I was with the director of the African Evangelical Alliance. And so the question was asked, what do you need? He said, what do we need? We need water. He said, we cannot wash our hands in the sand. We cannot wash our hands in dirty water. So we need clean water. Well, through World Hope, we do water, of course. And yet in West Africa, they're locked down. However, in Liberia, they have a curfew till 3. And Sierra Leone is kind of locked and unlocked. And we have rigs that drill wells. But one of the things, when we talked with them, one of the things that they said, you know what? If we could rehab wells, we can do that a lot faster. There are broken wells all around. We don't know who did them, but we can rehab. So we've done that. And right now we've just finished up and have reached over 30,000 people with rehab wells, and churches here to help pay for it. But then there's been this projection that we will have famine of biblical proportions that came from the World Food Program. But I'm saying now, well, we're trying to get ahead of this with water. We're trying to get ahead of it. Clean water, of course, as we all know, that helps with health, not washing your hands, but the regular health. And then now these people will have water to water their garden, so they'll have some food. So we can get ahead of this in this way.
Well, I think we've got a lot of stuff to think about.
Good.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I am Pastor Peggy from Slave Lake, Alberta.
I'm JoAnne Lyon, General Superintendent Emerita of the Wesleyan Church and founder of World Hope International.
And I'm Pastor Diane from Norfolk, New York. Tune in tomorrow for Tadpole Thursday. It's going to be so much fun. Until then, be safe.
Be healthy.
And be the church.
Amen. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.